Welcome, fellow wine lovers. This is the Wine Ghost podcast. I'm Mate Vash, certified sommelier and seeker of hidden stories behind the most mysterious drink in history. If you have any questions about the topics we mentioned during the shows, please look for the Wine Ghosts on Instagram, where you can send your questions and responses via direct messages or just leave a comment under the episode's post. You can also find easy ways to get in contact with our guests and follow their stories. But now, please grab a glass, get comfortable, and listen how today's ghosts get out of the bottle. Today's ghost is Kristian Kielmayer, who has so many credentials, interests, and experiences in the wine world that it would be really difficult to label him with only one professional title. And after our long conversation, I had the feeling that he doesn't want to be labeled, because he is always excited to tell the stories behind what's in the bottle, how to market it, sell it, and educate people about it. Kristian tells us about his exciting journey throughout the colorful world of wine, shares stories about his former and present positions in the international wine business, gives his opinion on the Central European wine scene. You can also hear how he arouses the curiosity of students as a wine educator, gives us a look how he imagines wine tour experiences, highlights the uniqueness of Palinka, the commonalities between coffee and wine, and much more. And as always, he does all that in a very enticing and easy to understand way. Do you feel the excitement in his voice? Well, I hope this episode will leave a similar impact on you too. Welcome to the show, Kristian. How are you today?
Good morning. Very well. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Appreciate that you're having me on your show.
Thank you. It's an honor to have my previous teacher at the show. I'd like to begin, or I'd like to go back to the beginnings for a little bit, because you already have a very colorful career in the wine business at this age already. And you are also a wine writer, a wine educator, a wine consultant, and you also worked in marketing and sales, also a very international career. But I like to go back to the beginnings, to the root of this fascination, and how did you get involved in the wine business at the first place?
Well, that's a very good question. And as you pointed out, I do many things, many different things in the wine world, because it's a very beautiful, diverse world, the wine world in general speaking. There's so many things. And once you get bitten, infected by this wine virus, by this wine bug, you basically, it's a never ending process. I see that as many of my students, starting off at a low level, and then progressing and going all the way up to the top. I saw it with many people. I did it kind of myself as well. I was sort of also influenced by a lot of other people, infected by the love and passion for wine. And this sort of, definitely people who in the wine world, they are in for a reason, and it's mainly for this passion and love to communicate this ever amazing world of wine. I think this is very important. And as you said, I'm a very diverse guy. I like to play point guard and center as well, kind of, and I think that's very important, that you understand the aspect of the wine business from the making, from the process. Obviously, you pointed it out. I'm also a winemaker, actually, graduated winemaker. So I love to see the process of making the wine, understanding it. Obviously, understanding the financial side as well, by buying and selling the wine. Of course, as well, finding out what the consumer wants and what the consumer needs in terms of education. A lot of those education seminars which I'm giving are as well to final consumers as well through my career. And for those people, you have to basically talk in a different language. You have to educate them in a total different way. But I'm a firm believer, the more you know about the product, and it doesn't matter, it can be wine, it can be a painting, it can be a piece of art. Wine is, by the way, art as well, or a car or a real estate. The more you know about the product itself, the more confident you are and the more fun you're having with the product and the goods as such as well. So basically, the more you know about something, the more fun you will have. And this passion should also be translated to the fun part. And how everything started with me, I like to pull this joke. When I was 4 years old, I was with my parents. We often went to Italy, and I fell in this big wine tanker, kind of similar like Obelix in his miracle stuff. But this is just a joke, obviously. There was a wine tanker, and maybe I tasted some wine with my father. I don't know that part because I was very young, but I didn't fall in. Everything started with history. At school, I loved history. I was very good at history. I was aiming for the best results, best exam results, and I was very curious. And since, I grew up in a wine country, Germany, very closely related to history. And I basically, my mother's side, I'm half Hungarian as well. And I live in Hungary now. I'm married to the love of my life, a Hungarian woman, my wife. So I'm obviously deeply connected to the Hungarian side as well. And those two countries, Germany and Hungary, have a very deep rooted wine history. So it was sort of inevitable that, I, through the love and passion of history, wine came along as well. At our university college, we had a wine society. And I'm not saying that by accident, because accidents don't happen in this way, but through some miracle circumstances, I got named as the next chairman of this wine society. And basically, I figured out, well, there are a lot of people in the wine society. They know more about wine than I do. It looks very silly that the chairman is not up to date. So so basically, I went to different wine schools. That was Bor Collegium back then with Gabriela Mészágos, obviously Gábor Rohály. That was the very first such wine school for consumers. And they were basically educating you on the tasting side. You got to taste a lot of wine. And, through this experience doing it, tasting it, and obviously later visiting wine regions within Hungary and then later Germany and the rest of the world, this passion just grew as such.
And how difficult it was to find your way or your position, maybe your first position after this education in the wine world, or what was the next step, so to say?
Well, you need always people who have a positive influence on you. And I had a very good mentor, Robert Seibert. He was a very, very generous and kind mentor as well, in the wine world. And you need always connect yourself with people, surround yourself with people who already done something. And you sort of admire them as role models, and you talk to them. And in the wine business, people are very open-minded, and they love to help. They love to help you. And of course, at the basic level, starting at the wine business, let's be very honest. That's not very difficult. It's hard work. You're either a sommelier, which puts a lot of effort, lots of hours. It's a lot of human power there. Mental fitness is very important as well. But the industry, the wine industry, needs people. Most of them start at the bottom. You work your way up basically. And this is when you listen to other people. Which I basically I'm saying that they're kind of role models, or I look up to them. Now, most of them started that way. They were trainees. They trained beside another person who was probably also several years ago a trainee, and they grew from them. There are different ways. You can either go into the restaurant business, in the horeca business, which is very hard, very tough, because you're on the mercy of the people with not very socializing hours. It's almost a 24-hour job. When people go party, that's when you serve them, in a restaurant, in a bar, and so on on the floor. That's very tough. And then you have obviously the off trade as such, which I choose very quickly after that, working for a wine merchant after a quick hotel, restaurant career. Well, I wouldn't say career. It was only 4 months.
And did you work on the floor as a sommelier?
I call my it was more about breakfast than wine, unfortunately.
Okay.
So, but back then in Hungary, you didn't have much international wines. So I figured the best way is to go to London when I was after graduation, because this London is still, I believe, the capital of the wine world, and being a very open-minded city and place, and you get all the wines from all around the world there. And it was just a little like for a young kid, like in a chocolate factory. Yeah, I remember my first New Zealand tasting. I tasted something like 180 wines within 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and 160 were Sauvignon Blancs
Wow.
out of those. So at
That's
the
a lot of acidity.
yeah, it's a lot of, but a lot of flavors, a lot of aromas. I never had this before when I was, I don't know how old, 26, 25. So, I never had this kind of amazing flavor profile of kiwi Sauvignon Blanc, which, with all the high tiles, all the high aroma precursors, basically, through the natural conditions, which I didn't know back then, and the more you learn, the more fun it makes it. Oh, wow, look, New Zealand is very green. They're very in the south. They have probably a strong sun radiation. They have a huge diurnal difference between day and night temperatures, and this all obviously accelerates aromas and flavors in the grapes, which has been translated to the wine itself as well. So back then, it was just, New Zealand wine. It tastes very different to the rest of the world, which I tried, and it was fascinating. And you have to surround yourself with people who know a lot about wine, and they're willing to share this knowledge, because this is very important. I think this is what I learned, that sharing is caring, and this is why I love education as well, because people love to share their knowledge. There are no secrets, basically, in such regard. And for me, it was, I worked in a wine trade in London for of 4 years, almost five, and then after a quick period on South America, traveling, working for 6 months, I returned back to England, to a different wine merchant in Bristol. And then again, my very first day when I walked into the office, there was this guy, and he came up to me and said, "You're studying for the Master of Wine?" I said, "Yeah, I just enrolled for MW." Said, "I'm in the second year. Look, we can learn a lot from each other." And my initial thought was, well, I certainly can learn a lot from you, but I don't know what you're going to learn from me. And basically, it was a great experience. That people are very humble and generous with their time and the knowledge. And we sat down, we did a lot of tastings back then, so it was great. It was definitely great.
If you mentioned you worked for wine merchant or in the wine trade, so to say, in London, how did it really begin, and what were your professional tasks?
It was funny because this was also, again, I could say almost like an accident, as such. But I was in England, London, for, I don't know, let's say quite some time now, and I wanted to have a good Riesling. And on my way on the bus to home, I passed by a wine shop, Odd Bins, big wine shop, in the corner at Little Venice, and I walked in and asked the guys, "You guys have a German Riesling by any chance?" I said, "Oh, well, look, we don't have much Riesling, or German Riesling. There's a wine shop called the Winery just a few meters down there. They have a huge selection of German Rieslings." Oh, well, I went there. I spoke with the guy inside. It was a French guy, and a manager, Guillaume, and he said, "Oh, if you love German Rieslings, why don't you come to our tastings?" And then he gave me this was a tasting, and I went up to this tasting a few weeks later. I thought it was a classical seated tasting. You have to be on time. It started at 4 o'clock. I was the first one, but it was a very casual, open, standing tasting. So I was basically the very first one. They didn't even open the wines. And when I just arrived, I looked at all the wines, and there were a lot of German Rieslings, a lot of great wines with personality. And the owner, David Motion, a musician walks up to me. He was born in Hamburg, in north of Germany. Spent his first 6 months there. I spoke good German, and we spoke German casually. And he gave me his card, and he said, "Look, I'm always looking for good people to start at the winery, the company." And I took this card, and I went up to do my WSET level 3 at the Bermondsey, at the headquarter, and I saw the ad, Liberty Wines is looking for someone. Oh, and I looked at this card. It said the winery at Liberties, but it was two different things. One is Liberty Wines, the wine merchant, and one was Liberty, the department store, and the winery. This wine shop was in Liberties, so it was two different pair of shoes. But anyway, I called David and said, I saw this ad. Oh, so that's not us. But since you called, why don't you come in? I went in, and I think he saw this passion and love for wine. My little knowledge back then for international wines, but my great heart to learn, the willing to learn. And he hired me. And I was really happy that finally I was working on a different floor, serving customers and tasting a lot of great wines. We had a great selection of Burgundy and wines which we sourced directly from producers. So you could say it was the sort of a craft wine merchant, before even craft wines existed.
And I was actually hoping for an answer like this. I didn't know this story, but that's what I also experienced in the wine world, that what you already pointed out, that it's not a traditional industry where competition is very present. Everyone tries to help one another, and also maybe as a common goal, everyone wants to have a nice glass of wine at the end of the day, so to say, or sell. And I think it's a very edifying story and very instructive story what you just told. And also, if I may say, as I know you as a wine educator, you are very communicative, and you make connections and you make friendships very easily. I think it's a great story and very encouraging how you also have this colorful career, but also get involved in the wine, maybe luckily, so to say, or as a luck, but you took the chance. It's a very instructive story. Thank you for telling.
No, absolutely. I think communication is very important, and having, as you said, having a glass of wine, having a good glass of wine. I think this is important because, end of the day, this is what we all want. We want to have fun. We want to enjoy it. I mean, I was speaking. One of another role model, basically, as such, Stefan Neidberg. He was born also in Württemberg. He has a lot of wineries down in Bordeaux. A very, very educated, highly skilled winemaker and entrepreneur as well. And he said, he could be easily he could be successful at any business, and he could make tons and more money. But this is not what he wants. Basically, he wants to enjoy it. He wants to have fun, and he wants to have the wine aspect and connected, attached to the land itself, to the value, to the very value which we are on. And this is very important. I know a lot of other guys. They could be successful in any field. A very good friend of mine, Tibor Juhas, in Hungary, in Szexárd, and he traveled around the world, and he came back to his home town, Szexárd, and became a winemaker, Pastor wines, everything built up from scratch. And he could be anything he wanted to be. He could be a salesman in Australia or a restaurant owner in London, but he wanted to be, again, attached to the very place which we call home, or the soil, the land itself. So this is actually very, very important for many people who are in the wine business, especially making wine. They want to have attachment, and they want to create a value. And this is what you and I as well do if we don't make necessarily wines, is that this value which they create, hopefully, that we translate to the final consumer, and we try to dissect this very complicated matter, because wine, end of the day, it is complicated. Sometimes we say the human brain cannot understand wine in his very matter. This is why we sort of come up with all the different terminology in wine tasting and all the different things. But I believe that end of the day, this is something we try to translate and communicate. This is very important. That the beautiful word of the wine, which is attached to values of the very origin of its place.
And I totally agree. And as you mentioned already, communication is key. And you work now as a wine educator, as I already experienced as well.
Yep.
And how did it really affect your way of communication, and what are the cornerstones what you pay attention to at your educational profile, or how do you really educate people?
Well, look, I think, just to get you into a different perspective as well. When I did my university degree, so the first stuff which I mentioned here was history, and through history was tourism. Is very, very big thing for me. I graduated as an economist and tourism expert in Hungary at the university college. And basically, I was working for a long time as a tour guide as well. And being a tour guide, you have to have a communication as well. And I often see that I do now a new business as well, that I'm guiding people around Hungary, Budapest. I offer them wine and gastronomy tours as well. So I'm getting a little bit into the non-classical tour guiding as well back again. But the classical tour guiding, this is something which is a bit strange for me, because what I see often that people are trying to I'm not saying show off with their knowledge, but they try to tell everything to the customer, which they know. And obviously, the human brain, it's impossible to process all this new information. You need time to settle it down. And there's an overfill. It's like a glass. It's a glass of wine. There's this much you can put in, and then it's too much. Then it overspills, and then you're wasting all the wine. So you have to understand the volume and the quantity, as well as the quality, of course, what you trying to tell your customer, your students, or your customer in general, as such. So this is very important, that you don't overfill the glass. I think this is one of the crucial elements which we all make the mistake, or we are getting very enthusiastic. Oh, we want to tell everything. And there's a reason why there are different levels in wine education as well. WSET is the best examples, level 1, 2, 3. So at level 1, you say, oh, there's white and red wine. At level 2, you say, oh, there's rosé and sparkling wine. And at level 3, you say, oh, look, there's fortified wine as well. And so this is just obviously a generic example. But you don't say at level 1, look, there's fortified wine. Because especially in a market when there's no in Austria, Germany, or Hungary, we don't have fortified wines as such embedded in the wine laws and wines in styles. It's meaningless. It's generally meaningless at the basic level. It becomes more important when you study and you progress further, and then you can fine tune those different things. I believe. It's the quantity you have to tell, and the interesting things. If you talk about education, if you talk to general public at a wine presentation, I think stories are very, very important. Personal stories. People get attached to this, and you have to sort of stimulate all senses, because I'm a firm believer of this NLP thing as well, neuro-linguistic programming, that you have to stimulate all the senses. Like with wine, you stimulate the hearing, the sight, the smell, the taste sensation, and you do this same with the wine as well, with information as well. You tell them a story. You give them a sense of action as well. You explain this thing in a different level. Some people are more audio, some people are more visual, some people have more the kinologic touch, the feeling attached to it. And you have to communicate, because it's such a diverse group of people. in the wine world, or generally the consumer as well, that you have to speak their language. And this is very important, speak their language. Because if we speak the same language, then we understand each other. And this might be at the beginning a very basic stuff, but that's okay. And then you progress, you go further. First, you read little tales as a child, and then later on, as you progress, you read Shakespeare and whatever. So it takes time. As a little child, I mean, I would never understood Shakespeare. I still don't understand it, but but you're getting what I mean. So I think it's very important that you communicate at the right level, and present yourself. And it's very and the most important thing, it's about them. It's not about you. It's about the customer, about the students. It's never about you. Everybody knows that you have the knowledge. You can always, write and do a YouTube video and just spread your knowledge. It's always about the customer, especially if you're facing them. It's always about them. That's very important.
I can only confirm what you said, because I also, I don't know if you remember our first class, because you poured some Grüne Veltliner at the WSET.
Yes, I remember. And you were working in Austria for a long time, and you instantly recognized it as Grüne Veltliner. And I asked you to tell me why. And you said, yeah, because I tasted so much. Well, this is great, because other people didn't taste that much Grüne Veltliner.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a very complex knowledge of wine. As a wine educator, because you have a group of people, as you mentioned, how do you really measure the key differences between people, and also how different knowledges could maybe create a whole and help each other also in the group, maybe, because you have a very great knowledge, I know, and you want to tell maybe everything, but also to stay on their level. And how do you really get this fine line where you could tell something new always, but also have their confidence as well, if you get what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it doesn't matter if you're a teacher or you're a consultant. I do both. The most important thing is always that you educate yourself. I listen to a lot of webinars myself, a lot of podcasts as well. I love podcasts in general speaking. I told you that earlier off the record, that I always love to listen to people, and I love to learn. I learn a lot myself, every day. And I learn also a lot from students as well, from you guys, from every level. So there's always some people who, ask you a question, like about histamine, for instance. I don't care much about histamine, but since my students ask me, oh, I'm allergic to this and this, so you sort of start to read in, you start to ask questions yourself. Is it sulfur dioxide which is affecting your allergy? Is it histamine? Is it something else? And you start to educate yourself. So being a teacher or a consultant, you have to be always up to date, and you read the news, you educate yourself, you learn a lot by doing. The second thing, which I believe is very important, that you understand the group, the whole vibe, and you ask questions, open questions, and then you see how the group is progressing, how the whole group is basically progressing as such. I think this is very important, that you're asking questions. For instance, in your case, you remember the Grüne Veltliner example, that you instantly recognize it, Austria. But I asked you, how is it, or why is it Austria? Tell the others, because you can learn a lot from each other as well. And by asking you, tell what's your opinion, what's your feeling, why is it for you, and you're questioning those things. Then you, by asking why and how and when and so on and so on, your honest friends, those questions, why, how, when, what, and so ever, the Kipling story about the elephant. So basically, you understand the whole thing. And I always urge the people, communicate between each other. I'll give you an example. When I done my WCT educator part. We were maybe 10 or 12 people. That was many years ago in London. And we had Ronan Sabern, master sommelier, and he's one of the key figures in the Court of Master Sommelier Education. He was there as well. He was sitting with us and listening to the wine and food pairing part. I mean, he was listening to this whole part, and this was just amazing that he had a great personality and someone with a great knowledge, being very humble and also generous. That later, maybe it was him or somebody else who suggested we should share each other's email address, and if we have any questions or we have different backgrounds, then we can ask each other questions as well about things. I mean, back then there was no the Facebook group. I mean, Facebook existed, but you didn't have these great communities about sharing this information. So this was amazing, and I done this many times with my other students in Austria, in Vienna, or in Rust. I always tell them, look, guys, if you want to share each other's email address, on a piece of paper, do a tasting group. And I think you've done this as well. You've done a tasting group yourself, guys, because at a certain level you can learn a lot from each other. And I think this is important, that you understand that you have in different backgrounds. And as you remember, I told you that on the very first day, as a collective group, you would pass immediately the exam as a collective group. I have no doubt about that. So this is very important that you understand, as a group you can do a lot. And you can accomplish a lot as a group if you organizing this well. I think this is great. But unfortunately, education works as an individual, so you have to pass the exams as a single person, as an individual.
And you also mentioned your Master of Wine Studies, that you were enrolled, or are you currently enrolled in the Master of Wine Studies?
Taking a break at the moment. I'm taking a break. It's been very tiring. It's been very expensive, time consuming as well. I met a lot of great people. It was a great experience. I haven't given up, obviously, but at the moment I'm thinking, rather having a pause. I have all my materials. I have all my study materials. Didn't burn them. I have everything. So I can restart at any moment. But currently, time, I have very little time. That's one of the problems. There are so many things which I'm doing, my business, consultancy related to wine guidings and a lot of other things. I'm involved in spirits very much as well at the moment. And that's one of the, I think the key issue is time at the moment, that I couldn't allocate enough time for the studies, so I rather pause a little bit and then see how things go, and obviously I constantly educate myself, but I just at the moment I have no willpower to sit down and do 12 wines in 2 hours 15 minutes. I rather do other things as well. So I'm currently on a break of the studies. Passed a lot of little exams, white wine paper and contemporary paper and a lot of different stuff. There are a few things which I obviously can get better at, but at the moment I rather find time for something else, and I have basically rather taking a little break on that.
Yeah, I don't think you need any explanation, because you are doing so many things. And I also would like to go back to some things what you were mentioning already. But for example, maybe this Palinka tasting panel, or this National Wine Expert Council at Hungary, where you also work. Maybe could you tell a little bit about these works or these consultancy works that you're doing?
As you mentioned, I'm a consult for the Ministry of Agriculture in Hungary, in Budapest as well, and we have various projects. One of them is used to be the Palinka project as well. I'm currently not on it, but we published a book a few months ago. It's sort of a guide for this Hungarian spirit, fruit distillate. Basically, that's very important. 100% fruit. But I'm also very much involved in other kind of spirits, protected origins as such. Consult for various producers as well as the ministry, on the PGIs, on protected geographic indication, because I think, and I pointed this out to you earlier on the wine, that attached to the land and the protected origin, I think that's very important, that you relate to a sense of place, or some people say somewhereness. I love both expressions, that you have a sense where it comes from. And this is very important for me as well when it comes to the drinks industry. And wine obviously has a lot of PDOs. We're very lucky. But in Hungary, with Palinka, with the fruit distillate, we do this as well. There are the PGIs, basically. Homocat peach, for instance, or some established one, Guernsey apricot Palinka. And we developed a map. I developed last year a aroma wheel for Palinka. And I found, to be very honest with you, the spirit word is amazing. I mean, with wine, we have grapes. And this is basically where you can make wine from. You're limited in a way. But with spirits, you have all the different raw materials. It's amazing. And, and with wine, you're sort of limited in a way to the fruit, to the grapevine belt between the 30th and the 50th latitude, more or less. But with spirits, you're way off. You can do everywhere. You can do from vegetables up in the north. You can do from some exotic fruit at the equator, and so on and so on. I think, spirits is very interesting as well. At least as interesting as wine, I believe. It's a very different word. And I was judging this year for the second time at one of the biggest spirit competition. The spirit selection is the Concours de Mondial Brussels. The spirit selections was in China, and I knew that Baijiu, I hope I pronounced it right, Baijiu is a big thing. But, I could never imagine that 30% of the world spirits production is Baijiu, actually. Something which you don't really much get in Europe, because it's very expensive, it's very unique, the taste is very unique. And a lot of things, and it was just incredible. And I was very lucky that I was selected also as a chair panel for 3 days of the judging. Working with great people together, and then doing other work as well in China on the spirit side. It was really amazing to see the different cultural objective on the spirit side. So in Hungary, very lucky that we have excellent fruits. And from those fruits, we can make great Palinka, apricot, peach, wild stuff as well. Like wild strawberry, for instance, or sloe, or blackcurrant, something which is very, very unique and special as well. And the generic fruits, which I mentioned, apricot, plum, apple, and some more expensive stuff like raspberry, for instance. Amazing. But generally speaking, when you go beyond the fruit belt and the grape belt, you suddenly realize that the spirit belt, from which you can make spirits, generally speaking, is huge. The whole world, actually. And suddenly you do cachaça from Brazil. You're tasting whiskey from Scotland, of course, from barley, grain, and so on. You have Baijiu from Shogun and things like that. So it's just amazing how diverse the spirit world can be. And I think you have to be, as a wine person, also very open-minded. And especially when you work in the drink industry, that there's so many great beverages out there, and you have to just tell the people, obviously, which is important, that responsible consumption. That's very important. That's the most important thing when you work with alcohol. And then second, of course, just be open-minded, because beside wine, you have so many great other beverages, spirits, coffee, and which have personality, often personality. And I love this. I love this in the world of wine, especially wine with personality, and the rest is just history.
And how would you maybe explain the personality of Palinka to a Chinese?
That's very difficult. I just give you an example. We had 2 years ago, we had the Pro Wine, which is one of the biggest trade shows I love the Pro Wine. It's a great place, organized in Germany, in Düsseldorf every year. For the very first year, we had a 4 square meter Palinka food distillate stand, and we were sort of, just putting Palinka on the map of the spirits, which is very difficult because only 1% of the Palinkas are exported. So most of them is drunk in Hungary. And this guy comes up. I think he was Chinese, and he asked me. He looks at the bottle which says Tokai Palinka from a single vineyard, 50% alcohol. And he said Tokai. I said, yeah, it is Tokai, but it's a grape mark or pomace spirit, 50% aged in oak from a single vineyard from Taya, a single vineyard, volcanic soil from Tokai, made from Formint, from the grapes, but it's spirit, my friend. It's 50%. Tokai? He asked back. Yeah, I said, yeah, it is Tokai, but it's not wine. If you're looking for wine, that's not here, that's somewhere else. And he asked again, Tokai? Yes, it is Tokai, I said to him. And then he had a sip. Suddenly he realized, oh, this was not what he was looking for. He was looking for sweet wine from Osu, but this was spirit from Tokai, 50% mark.
That was a hit in the face, I imagine.
Yeah, it was a completely different word. So the both Tokai, both are from the same place, but both made from the Formint mainly, or in this case Formint, but very different. And I said to him, look, this is what I tell you, that the communication is very important. But I could tell him only in English. I don't speak Chinese, so and I could tell him, yeah, it is Tokai, my friend, but it's spirit. So it's 50%. It's not 10% alcohol, and it's not sweet. It's dry and high alcohol. So how to explain it? That's very difficult. I mean, because with wine, people know a lot already. And obviously with Tokai, you know a lot. People, if there's one single wine region in Hungary, which everybody knows internationally, it's Tokai. Everybody knows Tokai. And this is a very big calling card for Hungary. We are very, very lucky. We are a very, very lucky country in such a way that we have Tokai. Because it's a very unique wine. But then Palinka, the spirit, how do you explain it? Wow. You have to educate them. You have to let them taste those spirits. You have to explain how it's made. And on a total different subject, I always was fascinated by the Japanese people, how they managed that sake has become such a great product, and people understand and feel a passion and love for sake, this rice wine, which is very, very strange for somebody who never had sake before. You have all the different acidity and the different flavor profile, and it's very different. It's very, very different. I could tell you a funny story. When Sam Harrop was walking up to our table at the International Wine Challenge, and he showed us a sake, and if you assume this is a wine, it's faulty. But and this was the table was assuming that he showed us a wine, and all the different volatility and all these things. But you have to judge it in the category as being a sake, and within a sake, this is it takes time. And I was asked the Japanese former Japanese ambassador, who by the way almost became a sake producer himself. He was dating in school a girl whose father was a sake producer, but then he sort of changed career path, became a career diplomat. And I always told him that, I find the Japanese people amazing how they managed this, for most people who never had sake before, this, let's say, strange beverage, to communicate and having this a success story, and showing this product and having such a huge fan base. I found this amazing, but I think the single answer to this is education. I mean, look at the WCT is also offering sake courses, which is amazing, showing this diverse and very complicated product and explaining to people. And this is how you do it. You dissected it in bits and parts, and you teach people about it. You make them taste, and you explain why it tastes like it is. And then you suddenly realize, wow, this is a fantastic drink. This is something which is really amazing. I mean, sake obviously is a fermented rice wine, basically. It has nothing to do with spirits. But regardless, talking just generally beverages, I think this is important that you understand that through knowledge, which I was saying at the earlier, that through knowledge you suddenly realize that this wonderful world of drinks. Is it wine? Is it spirits? Is it coffee? Is it a tea or beer? I don't understand much about beer, but and within all the different things that you understand that is through fermentation and all the process as well, that there's something miracle happening. If you learn about this at a basic or advanced knowledge level, you understand it and you start to appreciate the effort and work which is put in. So I think this is the key answer to your question, that education. You have to constantly tell people how it is, how it's made, and you have to have a good product. This is very important. You have to have a very good sound product, free of any faults. This is very important, yeah. So a quality product and quality communication behind it.
And in this noisy world, maybe we could say that also in the social media, why do you think are the best methods to communicate this kind of distinction, or maybe to also for the Hungarian wine market, and also as you are being a German or a half German and you are teaching in Austria but living in Hungary, how do you see maybe the key differences between these three countries, and how do they communicate their wines and their origins, their terroirs, and what are the main advantages, disadvantages? What do they do better? What do they do not so well?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very complex question which you ask, and that would take a long time to answer it in very detail. But generally speaking, I think in Austria you have a very good teamwork, people working together, and there's a continuation. There's basically, you have a continuous flow of progress. So Willy Klinger, for instance, is stepping down this year as chairman of the Austrian wine board. Wine marketing board, sorry, and he's done a great job in a lot of different fields. But I think when it comes to communication and marketing, often what you need, same with wine, you need personality, and we need, in Hungary especially, I think what Austria has done very well, it has key people, not just in winemaking itself. So you're not just associating with a wine region with a certain personality, like, let's say, which I highly regard as one of the key personalities, Willy Bründelmeier from the Kamptal, for instance, a great guy, such a progressive thinking, and an amazing attitude, and great wines. And he's definitely one of those, or in terms of sweet wines, needless to say, the Krachers, for instance, they done a great job in putting Seewinkel, which is a sort of a flat sandy area, with the fantastic sweet wines, TBAs and so on, and the different levels of styles of sweet wines onto the world wine map, sweet map, almost accelerating, passing Rost, actually, which has a century, several centuries of history. So I think you need key people, but you also need key people in the wine industry who are not related in terms of wine making. And with key people, I mean that that they can communicate well, but they can also having a fun, having a laugh. They can be very universal. So they have the knowledge, and they have also the fun part. This is very important. And they're team workers. So they work for a greater good. And Austria had this. Germany has this as well. You have key people, key personnel who write on German wines, for instance. English guy, Stuart Pigott. I mean, he writes so many great stuff in terms of books on German wines, which you find. Um, um, and then there are lots of other people as well who appreciate German wines. And it doesn't matter is it what nationality they are, but you have to communicate your values with authority. And I think what Hungary is lacking a little bit, and I was telling this often to the Austrians because I work very closely with them. I was working for 5 years almost in the Austrian wine trade as well, and being a lecturer for the Austrian Wine Academy since more than 7 years now, I think. And I think what the Austrians do very well, they're coming together and they're basically working together as a team, almost like a cooperative in such a way, and they're putting a big effort into this, and they have a continuous flow. They don't change every year. The chairman, the board, they don't come up with every year with new ideas. They come up with one idea and they work on that. Basically, is it the DAC concept or whatever? And you see how many people are jumping on it, and this doesn't mean that all the DAC wines are good. It just means that they have a certain style and they can communicate something. I know winemakers, they never believed in the DAC, but they're on it. A good friend of mine, for instance, from the Kamtal region as well, he is making DAC wines as well. Now, and because basically people believe in the concept and they understand it, and sometimes they give up their personal ideas for the greater good. And this is important. I think that you have to sometimes give up your personal idea for the greater good. If it benefits everybody, then you might want to change a little bit, tweak a little bit this whole thing. But this is a very complex matter. I mean, I could talk and there have been a lot of talk in the past about comparing Austria or with Hungary mainly. I mean, since they are neighboring countries. I love Germany because it's very clear. They have Rieslings, they have high quality wines with the VDP, with the VDP, obviously. And they also struggle in certain ways. I just been in a spring at the conference of the German Viticulture Board, and they obviously have to also adapt to the European laws in certain ways of the PDOs and PGIs. And basically there are no PGIs in Germany, which is strange. I mean, there is, but nobody's making wine out of them. And they had they also brought in some classic and selection wines, and nobody does that really. I mean, especially the selection wines. So there's always flaws. There's trial and errors. Nothing works strange. I mean, is straight ahead. I mean, with wine, you have one vintage, and that's it. And if you, for instance, using a barrel, fermenting it in barrel, and you have one vintage, and that's it. Next year, maybe you're trying it, just putting half in barrel and the other half in stainless steel. So it's always a trial and error. But my biggest concern in Hungary is that the progress is not effective enough. I think this is maybe the best word, that there should be a more clear path, what they're trying to achieve and what they want to do. And this is my one of my concerns. And we need also role models and people in the wine industry itself, not by making wine. We have Hungary has a lot of great winemakers, but we need people, who internationally renowned and acclaimed and working as a team. This is, I think, very important, that in the wine industry, and I told you that sharing is caring. You work as a team for Hungary in this case, and not necessarily as individual person. I think this is important, that people have to understand that as well. That when you talk about the progress, you come together, share your ideas, put it together, and work together. This is, I think, important.
You already mentioned your business. I would like to talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned this tour guide. model, so to say, to also to talk about you, or you just can you maybe introduce your business a little bit,
Yeah,
because I didn't know about that.
no, it's I've been beside the consultation for the ministry. I obviously do a lot of private stuff. I mean, I educate. Tomorrow we're having at ETHEC a great session with Austrian with the Burgenland Wine School, with the Fachhochschule Burgenland. Tasting. They asked me to present the Austrian and the Hungarian wines. We're doing 5 pairings, 5 flights basically of Cape Franco, Cabernet Franc, some Welsh Riesling, Olas Riesling basically, and it's fully booked. We have 55, 60 people, I think. It's been fully booked since a week now. I'm really happy. So that the Austrians, I helped them, but the Austrians organized it very well. I love the talent of the Austrians, how they organize. So I'm having my website, which is very simple to remember. It's kristiankielmayer.com. Christian, basically with like written in German with a K, and Kielmayer, it's a German name, all in one .com, and that's actually just in the making, but it will be launched in the 1st of December. I'm going online. I'm working on it. It's almost finished. And there, I always had my blog, and my blog is still running, but I haven't updated it since 2 years. So my website is obviously going to offer the different services, which I'm already done, just putting everything together. Translation, education, showing people the wine world in Hungary, the spirit world, the Palinka world, and the food and the city, so the tourism aspect as well. And I love photographing. I love taking pictures. I love the photography aspect as well, because that again, it's similar to wine in a way that you have to have a certain point of view, and you're explaining something through a visual communication, through a picture. And I love those great guys, is it Robert Capa or some of the recent guys, Ben Samati, in terms of nature photography, or Capa, obviously documentation, and a lot of other guys, Anselman and so on. They, with a single picture, they tell you so many things, and you amazed, you stunned. It's like with a glass of wine, when you're having a good glass of wine, said, wow, this is something new, this is something amazing, I love this. And I love to do this with pictures, of course, as well. And it's a lot of progress of learning, but I enjoy it very much. So I also offer photography tours within Budapest, for instance, and there's a lot of different things which come together, I think, as one package. And this is, you could say, that's me. The travel aspect, the wine and spirit aspect, and the communication, not by words, but by a picture. I'm a visual guy through photography. This is sort of like a holy trinity, as such, if you want to say that. The traveling, the tourism aspect, the beverage aspect, wine and spirits, of course, and then the visual aspect, the photography, and this comes together as a package. And beside that, I do the consultation, sales. I'm a firm believer that more you educate, the better you can make sale as well. I've done that many times. I saw that, we did this in Austria. I was educating colleagues, and we pushed the sales up massively. I'm a firm believer that the more you know about the product, and the more humble and with knowledge you approach the whole product, the better you can sell it as well. I think this is one of the key aspects as well, selling wine in these words. When people drink less but better wine, I think this is important, that people want to know more about good wines. And I think these are the aspects of my website as well. And beside that, I'm happy to share my passion on the blog as well. Actually, it is in English. This is only in English. Everything else is in English, German, and in Hungarian, of course. But the blog will be only in English. That's easier for me. Everybody speaks English almost. At least the people who listen to you speak English. So that's the whole aspect. So sharing the knowledge on the world of wine, spirits, and coffee. I love coffee as well. Just got into it a few years ago, trying to do my diploma in coffee, specialty coffee, through the SCAA, because I found coffee as well fascinating. And the rest, consultation on wine selling, how to sell wine, how to get to the market, education. I have a lot of private students already, or some private students already, who are doing the diploma or other stuff. And I think it's very important that the more people know about wine, the better we are actually. This is better for the greater good, and this information has to be shared. This is very important. So me.
Yeah, I also asked this question because I do know that you do communication very well and very effectively, also during the education and also during your business, as we just heard, and I'm going to put all the links below. I also wanted to ask this because I think one of the key things what Hungary is lacking is great communication and great wine tourism, or great tourism, international wine tourism in general, and which is not only concentrating on Budapest and welcomes guests in Budapest, but also on the countryside. And I don't know if you have any intention to go into the countryside or to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I just had a discussion a few days ago with Turley, for instance. Just roll back. A lot of tourists come to Budapest, and then they either go to Etek or try to find a wine bar. And not many people know that, but Budapest is one of the few capital cities who has not just one, but technically two wine districts. I mean, on the eastern side, we have the Matra. Yeah, well, there are not many wines there, but then we have Etek Buda as being a wine district, the 22nd district, for instance. And I was studying at the Sós school as well for winemaking. They have a little vineyards there as well, and just below that they have the huge Turley, a sparkling wine manufacturer there. And I figured out those people who come to Budapest and they don't have much time, maybe just 3 hours. But they don't want to sit down in a classroom. They don't want to go to a wine bar. They want to see some wines. They want to see a cellar. They want to see the aspect of winemaking, in this way, sparkling winemaking. And I can offer them, because I know the guys from Turley very well, and they know me, that I deliver quality education, quality communication. And I can get them, we just board the tram 47 and get off. That's 20 minutes from the center or 30 minutes from the center. And then do a wine tasting, a sparkling wine tasting, a little tour at the vineyard, see some wines, and taste some wines, visit the sparkling manufacturer, cellar of Turley. So that's a 3-hour program. That's not more. It takes only 3 hours. And then, of course, for those people, which I've done in the past, and I'm very happy, and I will continue this, visiting the key regions of Hungary, obviously, Balaton, Tokaj, and the south of Hungary, Pannonia, Szekszárd-Villány, basically. So I'm offering this. And I'm very much hoping that some of the other regions I can also show in the future. One of which is very close to my heart, is Matra. I spent 1 year in school in Gyöngyös, which is basically the capital of the Matra region. And it's a beautiful place. It's a volcanic wine region, but it lacks identity, and it lacks communication, and the different problems. So I have to wait a little bit and find the way to Matra. To visit Tokaj on a guided tour is very easy. To visit Villány is even easier. That's not a big deal. Szekszárd, it's also easy. Balaton, it's fairly easy as well. But advanced stuff is Matra. Matra is really advanced in a way that, because let's be honest with you. I mean, I don't want to show Irsoly Oliver. It's a very nice aromatic variety, but it doesn't represent Matra, in my opinion. It makes great aromatic, simple wine. I would rather show you a Kék Frankos. I would rather show you a Turán. And there's some guys who make, great wines. Tomáš Sečko, Bálint Josonci, some of the smaller guys who hands-on craft wines. And this is sort of the project, my wine project 2.0, as such, beside Turkey, beside Budapest, going to the well-known regions of Pannon area, so Sexad Villain, Sexad in particular. I love Sexad very much. Balaton, of course, is beautiful. And then obviously Tokaj and Matra. And maybe with Matra together, Sopron would be very interesting as well, just Sopron, Nesme and Pannon area. But that's again, that's a little bit more advanced. Because in Sopron, it's all about Cake Francoche for me. And there's some great places, which come with personality. I really believe that this Sopron with Cake Francoche, Balaton as well. Chopak is one of the great examples who is only allowed to produce white wine from the Olas Riesling variety. Dominated Olas Riesling variety, 85%. So there's a lot going on in Hungary, and I'm very, very excited. It's the best time in wine, actually. It's really the best time.
I think so too, and I can't wait to see that such a knowledgeable and communicative guy as you show this to the people and also to the international public, because as you also mentioned, that's what Hungary really needs, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you very much. And I think, this is just one sentence. I love to communicate my passion, on this, to see the sparkle in the people's eyes that, wow, this is amazing. And thank you very much for sharing. This is everything, it means everything for me. That when people say, wow, thank you for sharing. And, this is important.
So, and you already mentioned coffee as one of your passions. Can you maybe tell listeners about how does your fascination comes from coffee, and maybe some differences and similarities to the wine world?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is coffee is very, very strange because I never drank coffee in my life. Every time when people ask for coffee, I said, it's bitter. I don't like it. It tastes bitter, and so on and so on. And I remember this story very vividly. Again, when you ask me about wine, maybe I don't remember my first glass of wine that well, but I remember my first cup of coffee, which changed everything. And we were in Iceland. We were in Reykjavik with my wife together, and we were walking down from the hillside from this church down the street, and on the left side there was this coffee shop, Reykjavik Roasters. And my wife back then, she was drinking milk-related products with cappuccino and flat white and all the stuff. And I had maybe 6 coffees in my life, all terrible. And I go in as well, and she asked me, have a coffee. So now I have a cinnamon bun or something like that. I don't want to have a coffee. That doesn't. No, have a coffee. Yeah, well, okay, why not? She persuaded me to have a espresso, a single shot espresso. And suddenly I drink this coffee, this espresso, and it's not just lightning struck me and said, what was this? Is this coffee? I mean, it was fresh. It was fruity, it was clean, it was crisp, it was bright, a lot of fruit flavors, a lot of berry flavors. It was an Ethiopian something, a single origin Ethiopian. I don't, exactly from the Reykjavik roasters, they roast the coffee themselves. It was a single origin Ethiopian. So, wow, what was this? This was like wine, just like coffee, just in a different liquid. And I was gobsmacked, this can be coffee? I mean, this is amazing. And this was the starting point. And then I gradually realized that coffee has so many common things with wine. They're both fruit. So initially, none of them has to taste bitter, actually. Bitter is something which even the ancient people, the Homo sapiens avoided, because people back then at the prehistoric age, they know bitterness is poison. It's not bad. It's not good. And just in the country, there's a book on coffee and wine. The words two words compared, written by Morten Scholler. And this is very interesting because it says from tree and vine to cup and glass. So basically, there's so many common things when it comes to coffee to compared to wine. That is amazing. They're both harvested, they're both picked, fermented, processed. Just with coffee, once you have it, as a green coffee, you obviously have to roast it. You're basically making it, and then once you roasted it, you have to grind it, and then you have to make either espresso based stuff or filter coffee, and you're basically doing a lot of things in the middle in between. You have to use the right water, the right temperature, right grain size, and so many different things, aspects to it, because a sommelier is pouring it wine. He cannot change it. I mean, the only thing what he can change is temperature, but and give it maybe some air. But I don't think there's anything else you can do to a wine. I mean, you're not going to add anything to it. You're not going to, you have to use the right glass. Yeah, there are a few aspects, but I mean, this is more common sense that you're not using a paper cup, of course. So you're having the right glass, you're having the right temperature, and you're setting the right mood. And the coffee industry, like many other beverage industries, borrows so many terms from the wine industry on describing it. A few years ago, we were on a barista champion, and this guy was showing. Was a German guy, I think. Showed this filter coffee. He made it to the judges, and he was explaining the coffee, like wine, like a sommelier, from the bean to the cup all the way. Where it was grown. He talked about Ethiopia. He talked about the different variants, the different Arabica types. He talked about the process of the fermentation, of the anaerobe making method. A lot of relation to wine, obviously, with fermentation. Then he talked about how he made the coffee. What filter, what system of filter brewing he was using. And then he talked about the different aromas as the coffee cooled down, from 80 Celsius degree down to 40, 50, changed the flavors. And he was talking about the coffee like a sommelier would talk about wine. And I found this fascinating. Obviously, he made a lot of things up, but that doesn't matter because it's still the experience. And since that, we have 2/3 of our kitchen is full of coffee-related equipment. We have a little espresso machine, a grinder. We have V60. We have a French press. I have a Chemex. So all the different, and I use filtered water. I have a kettle which shows the temperature. I use a special scale which shows you the right amount, the grams to a decimate point. So it's something which is fascinating because you can do a lot of things. My wife, since that drinks only filter coffee, I love to make filter coffee for her. I'm still an espresso guy. And I found it amazing that you can have a coffee tasting. They call it cupping, and they have this big spoon and they swirl it like this. I'm a more wine guy, so I do it the wine wise, a wine in a wine way that I have the coffee, and I put it all together, and I just do it like with wine, and in a blind coffee tasting, a cupping. I'm not saying I'm getting all the origins right, but I usually get Kenya and Ethiopia fairly right. And I get Brazil fairly right, because those are the distinct countries which I know exactly how they taste usually for me. This is not what I'm always getting it right, but I'm a fairly good percentage because I love Ethiopia, and it has a very wine-like attitude, very fresh, bright, a lot of red berries usually. Kenya is a little bit more herbal, a little bit more tomato, greenish, a bit more vegetable, but very clean and fruity. Brazil, for me, tends a little bit more darker, a bit more brownish, a bit more chocolatey, less the white milk chocolate stuff, more kind of darker cacao-based stuff. And then you have Panama Geisha, which is, just amazing. It's very expensive, and wow, it's very intense. Bigger beans as well. And, you get in a cupping, it's like with wine, wow, you can get the sense of place. wow, this is amazing. I mean, there's so many flavors and aromas there. And I visited only one coffee farm when I was earlier this year in Tanzania. Uh, and you met the producer and you saw the vines there. Wow, this is same like visiting a vineyard. I mean, this is amazing. This is great. I mean, growing coffee is very hostile, by the way. Um, but
Have
it's
you
just.
have you visited other places other than Tanzania,
No,
maybe?
I was once in Mauritius, but we just saw some wines, some coffee there. Sorry, coffee food there, but just on the road. Tanzania was the only place which I visited, and I would love to visit more. I'm maybe going next year to Colombia, visit some of the growers there. It is a bit more hostile, it's not that easy like with wine. And it's different. It's for many reasons. It's still a very different subject. But I believe that wine is very special. That people take pictures of vineyards. It's very if you look at the vineyard side, it's always very beautiful. I mean, the good wines is usually very beautiful, and it's just rows, lines, orientation, and you have everything in place. With coffee, it's mostly not like that. You need a banana tree to shade it. It grows in a jungle. Doesn't have much light, so
It's
a
not so
coffee.
picturesque.
No, it's not. It's not. Unfortunately, not. You have. It's very difficult sometimes to reach. Arabica grows at over 1,000-meter altitude, so you have to get to 1,000 meters as well. It is mountainous. It's a bit more difficult. You have countries which maybe not the safest one. Mostly, I don't want to name any countries, but you get it. But generally speaking, it's not that picturesque. Overall, like with a vineyard, you have a nice chateau or something, or river, and it's just beautiful. Those vineyards which come to my mind from the Mosel to Hermitage to Burgundy to California, Santa Barbara, it's just a photo album. With coffee, it's a little bit more difficult, my opinion. But I don't have the experience, to be honest with you. Judge on the picturesque of a coffee farmer. But the thing which I saw in Tanzania, made by a cooperative, it's very difficult to take good pictures there because you're shaded, you're banana trees, you have a lot of jungle there. It's rural. It's you're 1,500 meter up in the mountains, dirt road. Again, it's difficult to make good pictures there from the coffee farm itself.
As you mentioned, maybe vineyards or the best vineyards are maybe at the most beautiful places on earth.
Absolutely.
Do any places come instantly to your mind where you've already been, and could you maybe recommend wine travelers to go to, or what are your favorite places maybe?
Oh, look, I mean, being a half German, half Hungarian, I definitely recommend you Germany. I mean, I was born in Württemberg, and if you go to Heilbronn, it's amazing. There's some vineyards in Stuttgart as well, up there. It's Untertürkheim, great places there as well. Heilbronn, the northern part of Württemberg, amazing. You go down to Baden, you have the lake there, the Bodensee. It's amazing there as well. If you go to the Mosel, which you already mentioned, wow, this is amazing. I mean, stunning. I mean, words cannot describe it. Something similar you can experience at the Wachau, for instance, at the Danube, which is again amazing. It's UNESCO World Heritage. There's a reason for that. Tokai is UNESCO World Heritage. If you go to Tokai again, it's fascinating. You see the fog coming in, which is having the botrytis. You go to California on a higher plateau, somewhere in the Napa Valley, you see the fog coming out, the humidity. It's incredible. You go to Burgundy, you see the slopes. You're passing by the Route Nationale 74. You see in the right side from Dijon down the vineyards and the different patches. You see some of the world's best Chardonnays, the best Pinot Noirs, Grand Cru vineyards there. It's just amazing how how well it's organized. To be honest with you, I mean, any region, and as you mentioned it to me, that vines are like humans. They love a good panoramic view. They love this picturesque view. You know, they are there for 60, 80 or more years. I don't know how long. You know, a certain area, it's you know, they're not uprooting it. So maybe very old vines as well. You know, 100+ years easily. So they are in for the long term, and they cannot move. The roots, their feet are anchored into the soil, into the ground, and basically what happens is that, you know, they have to enjoy this view. I mean, I'm getting a little bit sentimental here, but I'm a firm believer that same as with human, they choose beautiful places to live. So does wine, and they thrive well in those conditions. And let's not get into the erosion aspect, and you know, how much water, irrigation, or you know, sun aspect, and so on and so on. But I think, you know, this is important. And if you look at the great places of the world, Wachau, Mosel, Rheingau, Tokaj, Burgundy, the Côte d'Or. Or you go to Northern Rhone, and I could name a lot of other places as well. South Africa, you know, around Stellenbosch, or if you go to Aconcagua, Mendoza in Argentina, or earlier Chile, which I mentioned. Those are amazing. You have the mountains set in the background. You have a picturesque view, and so many things which are just beautiful. You sit there with a glass of wine, or stand there with a glass of wine, and you're just enjoying it. And I mentioned to you the sense of place, or sense of somewhereness, as other people like to put it. I believe this is something we know which is really amazing, and this is something which can be exported. You can. I urge everyone to visit beautiful wine countries, wine places, and there are so many of them. And just make up your mind. The wines which you like, go and visit those places. And then take something home, relax, and when you have a glass of wine, you have a glass of Mosel. You have the Mosel in your glass. You have the bends, how the Mosel bends, and you know, these vineyards, or you have the fog line from Tokaj there. You know, how the fog comes over, and you know, from the rivers, and affects those places. You have this in mind, or the slopes, the Côte d'Or. If you have a good glass of Chambon-Musigny in your glass, you have that the picture and all the senses. You have it there, and you know, it's just how you stimulate this whole thing, and that makes people feel happy. And that's why I appreciate very much that people, you know, work the land so hard and make great wines, and all the other people, you know, they try to bring it closer, like you as well. You being a sommelier, in a way, in a positive way, influencing people, you know, being open-minded to show them this and this and this. So this is amazing.
And Watson, I guess so too. And I think it's very easy to link travel to the terroir or to more beautiful landscapes. Maybe it's really the feeling gets through the glass, and also these wine ghosts behind the wine industry, the winemakers, which you already mentioned. And what's maybe on the top of your bucket list now in terms of traveling or destination, or do you have any?
Oh yeah, well, you know, I've been this year a little bit lavish. I visited 3 continents. I was in Africa, as I mentioned to you. I was in the summer in Asia, in China for a long time, and I just came back a few weeks ago from America, from the West Coast, California, and other places. So I'm a little bit. I'm not saying I'm tired. I'm not. But at the moment, this year, there's only one trip to a coffee exhibition in Milano, in Italy, which we are visiting, the coffee exhibition. And then I wanted to visit a friend of mine in Lebanon next year, but you know, he rather said, you know, let's wait a little bit. The situations are not the best at the moment. So Lebanon was on the agenda. I shall visit a few wine shows, you know, beginning of next year. taste a little bit more wine. And you have to understand that two different things. Wine tastings are great for taste a wide range of wines. So if you go into a Pro Wine, or you're going to a London Wine Fair, or or the Paris Wine Fair, Paris Wine Show, or the New York Wine Show, and this is a great, because you have all the wines there, and you can talk to people, but it's very quick. Sometimes not 100% personal, but you have a great range of wine tasting. And when I'm in the wine regions, I don't even have to taste the wines. I want to see rather the vineyard. I want to get a feeling for the place. I want to get a feeling for the people, and then maybe at the end I taste a few wines, talk about everything which we just saw and discussed. So for this instance, I really enjoyed California, because I met a friend of mine in Sonoma, who I met 10 years ago when I was there, when we met first time there. So, and we were tasting some wines from 2009 as well. And then I got to know some of the places which I didn't know: Santa Barbara and the southern part of San Francisco. Those AVAs, Santa Ynez, San Luis Obispo, and so on and so on. I didn't know those places. So and it was more interesting to see the vineyards, and get a feeling for the place and talk to the people, how and what they do and why they're doing it. Because the wines you can taste at a lot of different places. So these are the two different things. And next year, at the beginning, I rather taste a few wines, just to get myself educated. And to be honest with you, what wine trips? Maybe a few wine trips here within Europe, I think. Those are definitely. And I'm planning a trip to Madeira again, which is amazing. I love Madeira, and I love the wines there. The people are really nice. Câmara dos Lobos, Funchal, and then going to Porto Muniz maybe to see some steep vineyards there. And obviously Madeira is a little bit different. There are just a few number of producers, but you can taste some really, really amazing wines, and there's a history there. Some of the old forgotten wines are getting rediscovered, and Madeira is one of them. I'm really happy that once people taste Madeira, a strange wine in its sense, how it's made and how it's aged and everything, but it's just amazing. It's just fascinating. I really, really love Madeira, and probably in February I'm checking out Madeira for a few days, tasting some wines, visiting some cellars, and maybe some vineyards as well. More and more wineries have actually vineyards. It used to be only Henriquez, and it's now a lot of other guys have also smaller vineyard properties as well. So I'm looking very much forward to it as well.
Can you maybe recommend some vineyards on Madeira for wine travelers?
I think it's just the classic ones. I think if you go to obviously the majority of the producers are based in the capital in Funchal. Henriquez is in Câmara dos Lobos, and I love the wines. They're a little bit different to the rest of the styles. And there's the big ones, obviously, the Madeira Wine Company, the Blendies, obviously, and what is fascinating, obviously, there's a new producer as well. There's some I forgot the name, but there's some a group of women who put together a kind of a joint venture together. It's really really amazing. They have young wines at the moment only because you need time with Madeira as well. I like. Let me just think of it. I always keep forgetting the Japanese company, Barbeito. Sorry, having a blackout. Barbeito, a very different approach. They don't use caramel. They use a little bit more younger style of wines. Barbeito is very interesting. Henriquez, I mentioned to you. The Madeira Wine Company, which is a big, the Blendies and a lot of things are there. Pereira Oliveira, one of the very old, one of the very old properties. They have a lot of backdated vintages. I think they purchased the Olin Brothers property as well. Justinos is there as well. Great wines. Borges. I visited Borges as well. Again, a very different approach in terms of Madeira winemaking. I mean, the best way, if I say that, you book your ticket, book your accommodation, and make a few appointments, that's the best thing. Unless if you don't want to make an appointment, just want to discover it, then you can go just to Funchal. The big houses like Madeira Wine Company and some of the other ones, obviously as well. They have tasting rooms. They offer this as a service. You can visit them, but it's a bit more touristy. And I don't know. I don't need to know how much how a barrel looks. I'm rather interested in for instance, how much tax they have to pay, to the EU on or how much they're getting out of a barrel, of the loss. And I know the fine nuances. This is more what's interesting for me, or what rootstocks they are crafting it. So I want to know the more specialized information because. I think that this is what kicks me off. Or does caramel really influence the style of the wine, or is it just a color? Can we try two different wines? Which one is caramel, non-caramel? Or show me a good estufagem versus a cantero system. The same wine may be aged in a different system. So those are the little things which interest me. And obviously, show me a good cercial, a dry cercial, which I really find fascinating. And so there are different approaches. There's one of the more education approach. I have to teach this stuff eventually, and people are gonna ask me questions. How is Madeira made? What's the difference between Estufa and Cantero? And then the more they want to know, the more I have to talk about certain aspects of Madeira, of the flavor profile of Sotolon and so on and so on. So this obviously, if you are signing up for a touristy group, you're not gonna get, but you get a very good actual generic information of the place and so on. So it depends. It depends on what you're looking for.
Thanks for the insights. And can you maybe, I know that your time is kind of restricted, so I think we could talk for hours about everything maybe. And you have a very deep knowledge in every category, and or in a really great overall broad knowledge and very connected. But can you maybe recommend for some blogs and books also for maybe beginners who are beginning their journey in the wine world, already got bitten, but maybe their knowledge is not so extensive as yours, and also maybe some blogs that also more professional people could follow?
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously lots of specialized websites on certain topics, on sherry or Madeira, which obviously the local government body is very, very good. Just to be a second on the podcast, since we're doing a podcast, the ones which I definitely highly recommend as being for all groups and everybody is interested or could be interested, is obviously Gildsom from the Guild of Sommelier, the Wine Enthusiast podcast, which I found very very good as well. Then there are some specialized stuff, Wine Australia as well. And then there's the Holiday Wine Companion, but I think that has not been updated recently. If you want to obviously spirits, then there's some like whiskey topic. It could be interesting. Tasting notes. There are a lot of different podcasts on the wine for normal people, or which I found really interesting is I Will Drink to That, a wine talk by Levi Dalton, which is very interesting because he definitely interviews some of the people who in the wine knowledge on the wine world have great knowledge. I just recently listened to an interview with Russell Hone from Burgundy. Found it fascinating, since I know Russell as well, Russell and Becky. So I believe that these podcasts are very good, and then generally speaking, you can get out in the wine world. There's overflow. I think you have to find. I'm not saying your niche, but you have to find things which you really like at the beginning, and then you can always extend on those things. Let's say you are interested in Madeira, then obviously. You visit the Madeira's local wine website as such. Then you look up wine merchants who have different Madeira on their portfolio and what they looking at. You can ask them obviously where are they getting the information from. So I think. This is one of the key aspects as well. To be honest with you, I haven't, I'm not really up to date on the blog side that much because I'm more a guy who likes to go out and more the classic guy who likes to read a book and likes to talk to people. And with the blogs, I'm doing my own stuff, obviously, and I'm less on that side. But I think that there are great blogs out there which you can listen. I mean, for instance, Jamie Good is also a guy who, one of the first guys who started blogging on wine. A classic example, how to write, for instance. There's a lot of things. I believe the first thing is you should see what you like in terms of style, wine. Is it more the light for the beginners, especially, light fruity style? Then maybe, check out some of the Rieslings. Check out, what Stuart Pigott is writing, for instance, or look up some of the German sites, some of the people who work in the restaurants, or like you, doing a podcast based in Germany, if I recall right, and obviously you're going to do eventually more in Germany as well. And I think this is the approach forward because there's an overload of information. And I would rather urge everybody, dissect it. Don't spend too much on the front of the screen, in front of the phone. Just go out and, have fun, taste wines, talk to people. You get a lot of information when you talk to the producers. Go to tastings, talk to the producer itself, and just enjoy the subject itself and, come together with people. Get together with people, and the rest you can look it up on YouTube and on podcasts. Just make essential, just balance it. This is very important. Like with good wine, it's always about balance.
Well, it's a great final word. Thank you very much. Do you want to add anything, or do you want to?
No, I think we covered a lot. I mean, I believe that there's it could be endless discussion. I'm very happy that you do this podcast. I really appreciate it, and I obviously wish you the best of luck. And maybe in a year time, we get together, or if you are in Hungary or somewhere, I'm in Germany, then let's get together a glass of wine, and we can do a face-to-face podcast as well. Next to a good glass of Riesling or Burgundy or Tokai or whatever, good wine. And
sounds great to me.
I think we can do that as well. And no, really, I mean, there's a lot can be still said, about communication, about studies. I think just have fun. This is the final message. Have fun and share your passion and your knowledge with other people as well.
Well, thank you very much for this advice as well, and have a great day, Kristian. Thank you very much.
All the best to you as well. Have a great day. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you very much.